of mystical is as follows: of relating to or stemming from mysticism or immediate understanding of spiritual matters, especially when experienced as a direct communion with God. Awe-inspiring or mysterious, of mystics or mysticism, relating to or based on intuition, contemplation, or meditation of a spiritual nature. Inspiring a sense of spiritual mystery, awe, fascination. The definition of adventures is as follows: verb, engage in a hazardous and exciting activity, especially the exploration of unknown territory. The adventure into the forest. Noun, unusual and exciting, typical hazardous experience or activity, or recent adventures in Italy. I have been extremely blessed in my life. We all can live a life full of mystical adventures. Our human body is hardwired for that experience, yet we live our lives oblivious to this. Many people have a life and death experience when they tap to the beyond. Each one of us will ultimately have this experience through the way down. Yet while we are alive, we just live a 9 to 5 existence.
Wow. During external chaos, I say, wow, I'm alive. During this pandemic, I say, wow, I'm alive. During the storming of the Capitol building, I say, wow, I'm alive. During all the political battles, I say, wow, I'm alive. During this economic crisis, I say, wow, I'm alive. We choose to see how we feel about life. Life is always changing and is never the same. Where you put your attention is what you receive in life. Ponder this over. What can you focus on which is not external? That, my friend, is the key to life.
I remember when I was a child, my uncle took my brother and I to a Bob's Big Boy for a chocolate milkshake. The placemats were a spaceman with the words, "Take me to your leader." My brother and I were so much in joy placing these masks over our faces. In one way, we knew that we came from the stars, and it was real funny to see those masks. We know that these earth and bodies were stardust and could laugh at the joke. Yet, we really take this life too seriously. We think this world is so physical, yet over 94 years ago, Einstein taught us different. Yet we still continue to live and believe so staunchly in this space-time continuum. My brother and I knew we were special, and yet we knew everyone was special but didn't know about it. I remember looking at the stars when I was a child, and I knew that I came from beyond the universe. Here it was in a tiny human body. but something inside of me knew that my consciousness existed everywhere. I was the sun and the stars. I knew as human beings we had this capability to experience this, but at the time our Western culture never expressed the idea. I remember when I was probably about 10 years old, my yearning for self-discovery really began. I began to look consciously for ways to learn about myself. Wherever I heard the word India, or meditation, or yoga, it would send a chill down my back. I remember trying to get involved with church, but I had a hard time with the concepts. I felt that life was glorious and incredible. Christianity was trying to make me feel guilty for what happened 2,000 years ago. At the time, I had a strong connection with Christ, which I still do. It was my own personal and private connection. I felt that religion should be a private experience. I had my own personal experience with the Creator. At times, I would watch the church services on TV, but it really didn't have any substance. I felt it was a lot of talk, and it took advantage of people. I knew at that age, if I kept my vision, that I would someday have the experience that I was looking for. I knew the doors were inside of my own being, but I wasn't conscious of the door being open. I knew I needed a direct, personal experience of my Creator. My life as a child ran on two levels. I was a happy-go-lucky kid. I loved the world and played to my heart's content. The other side of my life was very personal. I wished for the stars and for my friends on the other side. I lived in this world, but I didn't altogether leave my inner world. I knew there was a purpose to life. Our culture at that time already expressed our desire to become one with our Creator. We were taught that when you die, you might have the chance to experience your Creator. I could never buy that. I knew as human beings we had the capability to have a first-hand, moment-to-moment connection with our Lord. It was direct and personal. As a child, I never wavered from that. At times, I would have fleeting glimpses of that experience. I remember waking up and feeling such a joy and ecstasy. I knew that in my dreams, I went to such an incredible place. I didn't have full conscious memory. I knew my friends were looking after me. I felt that in due time, I would be shown the way to consciously 24 hours a day to be in that joy. One experience I remember was in Little League. I was stepping up to the plate and the catcher, Ricky Nixon, the nephew of Richard Nixon, told me that a young Indian boy born in India would someday come to the West and teach knowledge of oneself. Years later, after meeting Raji, this experience filtered back to my consciousness. The Indians believe that the whole universe is being recorded like a video camera. Man has the potential to tap into the energy fluctuations and bring back experiences from the past and the future. Take Nostradamus, the famous French philosopher. He had the ability to foretell the future. Every human on the face of the planet has this potential, but it remains hidden. I'm sure that years later, Ricky Nixon never remembered saying such a thing. Can our minds be used like an antenna and prophesize things in the future, and yet as humans, we are totally unconscious about it? I remember years later this episode. Even back then, I had signs in my life to relax, enjoy this ride of life. Patience pays off. We just have to be persistent, and in the end, everything will come to fruition. It was kind of funny that years later, Richard Nixon became president. I remember during the Watergate crisis, I was glad he had to leave office. Years later, I have a different perspective on things. But before he died, I admired him for being a great statesman. He was crucified by the world, and yet he came back and carried on with dignity. My view of him changed. I guess you would say I had love and compassion for him. I felt he was an old wise man for America. Over the years, my feelings and thoughts changed. During the Nixon era, I was very much against the war. I was anti-Nixon. But over time, we can respect those whose ideas don't follow our own. I'm yearning to be more open and accepting from other people. Years later, I can see that God always provides hints that He is inside of us.
Once upon a time, there were two twin brothers named Little Ricky and Little Johnny. Little Johnny was a genius in picking up and learning new things, while Little Ricky was what you would call on the slow side. It took him hundreds of tries to learn new things. For example, one Christmas morning, their wonderful parents presented them both with brand new bicycles. Both of them were so excited. Well, they took them outdoors. Little Johnny hopped on his and immediately started riding down the block. Well, Little Ricky didn't have the same luck. In fact, it was kind of funny to see how clumsy he was. He didn't give up. He knew deep down inside he could learn how to ride this. It took him about a month. The first time he realized that he was actually riding the bicycle, he was filled with joy. He was so grateful. I did it. I didn't give up. This incident carried him all throughout his life. Every time he had to learn something new, he remembered the experience of learning how to ride a bike. In fact, years later, his wife said that he learned things so quickly. Little Ricky just smiled. He knew that life taught him such a precious lesson at such a young age. Never give up. Persevere. You can learn anything. It may just take you time.
I remember in the sixth grade, my brother and I received a series of exercises from my father. My dad drew each exercise on a brown piece of paper. It was enclosed in a brown folder. At that time, my dad said these exercises came from the Air Force. I practiced these exercises for many years. When I began to study yoga, I found out these exercises were really yoga postures. It wasn't until 20 years later that my dad told me that he had a yoga teacher in the early 60s. Those exercises came from my dad's teacher. It was kind of funny. For years, my dad couldn't understand my brother and I. When he found out that both of us were on the same wavelength, we both laughed. It was kind of funny that years later, I realized that the exercises my dad taught me were the foundation of the exercises I do today. Even back then, I was guided in learning about ancient postures which create good health to the body. I did not have any formal teachers, but my brother and I did these exercises every day. To this day, it is a foundation for my physical health. I was lucky as a child. My parents were conscious of the foods we ate. We weren't vegetarian, but our diet was excellent. Our diet consisted of vegetables, grains, fruits, and poultry. We only had soda pop for Christmas and Easter. We had some junk food, but fortunately it was controlled. My body thrived on good, wholesome food. These habits were easily incorporated into my life later on. As a child, my brother and I would go to bed between 7:30 and 8 o'clock every night. Our bodies naturally followed the rhythms of life. Consequently, we hardly ever got sick. I was probably out sick for a week total my whole 12 years in school. Subconsciously, my life was directed to a healthy lifestyle. My mom said you can go to bed as late as you want, knowing that we'd be so tired around 8 o'clock and we would just fall asleep. I remember my mom kissing us goodnight, and we would fall asleep before she got out the door. I believe that everything is contained in our DNA. I feel at a young age, I tapped into the past where I had this spiritual upbringing where the human body is divine. At this time, none of my friends could relate to this. This is another factor that we can listen and find guidance from within. We are never alone. One incident that still remains to this day is the following. One day, while we were in high school, my dear friend Mark Blackburn and his uncle Carl took my brother on a boat ride. It takes probably half an hour to reach the ocean from where we took off in the harbor. We got off the harbor, we moved left to where we were directly off Big Crota, where my brother and I served as a kid. We were sitting there, and all of a sudden, we feel this tremendous rush of energy with thousands of bubbles underneath the boat. It's kind of scary. Finally, this huge well emerges to the surface, probably 10 feet away. When I saw its eyes, it was such an incredible sight. Pure wisdom, kindness, compassion, and supreme intelligence. Today, this day's probably 46 years later, I can still vision this in my mind's eye. I always was in love with dolphins and whales, but to see one in the wild like this was truly a gift. I could sense and see the magnificence of such a beautiful creature of God. If he wanted to, he could completely destroy the boat, but that's not its nature. We need to learn from the dolphins and whales in our lives. They have so much we can learn from them. While I was in France, one day I woke up and saw huge waves breaking. The waves were probably 15 feet high. The surf spot was at La Barre, a famous but now extinct surf spot. I took off on a huge wave, stood up, and the next moment I was free falling down the wave. Back then, there were no leashes. My board got carried to shore. La Barre had a jetty, and there were 15-foot waves breaking on the rocks. The rip was so strong, it was like a river. For the first time in my life, I said, Lord, if you exist, you had better do something real fast. I closed my eyes and saw an incredible light and a small Indian boy. The next moment I was on shore. Everybody on shore said it was a miracle. The next day I decided to go to India. As I look back at that experience, I felt the hand that embraced my life. I felt so protected. Here I was only 18 years old, but I knew my life was protected. I was about to start the adventure of a lifetime. This is definitely a near-death experience for me. In the early 70s, I read books about the death experience, and my experience closely resembled that experience. I saw a great light which filled my being with bliss that is boundless. I saw a figure which told me without words that everything would be all right. This experience I knew could be experienced consciously. It didn't have to be a hit or miss affair. I knew a human being could experience the source directly, no matter if he or she were sleeping, dreaming, or in the wake state. Man had the ability to tap into the source of life. After my surfing accident, Peter and I started our trip to India. I was very excited. I knew that something wonderful was going to happen in India. All my dreams would come true. We drove from Biarritz to Venice, where we stayed 2 days with an Italian friend from high school. We drove through Yugoslavia. At that time, it was a communist country. The people at that time were very suspicious of outsiders. They weren't very friendly. The countryside was amazing. We were high up in the mountains and could see the Mediterranean Sea. Peter would drive and he had this harmonica he would play. He was actually a good player. We drove to Athens in Greece. We spent a week there. I loved going to the Parthenon. Here I was in the cradle of such an incredible civilization. I was in awe. We sold our car and took an airplane to Turkey. When we landed in Istanbul, I knew this is where East meets West. The city was so different. The Muslim mosques were so beautiful. The policemen had submachine guns. I never saw that before. I remember staying at this house where a lady came in and said we had better leave because the police was going to raid the place. She said people used drugs and the police were going to bust the place. I felt someone taking care of me. I didn't want to end up in a Turkish jail, especially because I don't use drugs. That would be hard to prove in Turkey. We spent a week in Istanbul and then went to Ankara. In Ankara we had to stay a week because the border was closed. The Shah of Iran was having the 1,000-year anniversary party for Persia. He didn't want young Westerners or trouble to come to his land for this party. I heard that the Shah even built props to hide the poverty. I had a friend who went to the party and said it was quite the affair. They had air-conditioned tents. The Shah spent thousands of dollars. While in Ankara, we saw the Queen of England in a parade. There were thousands of soldiers carrying submachine guns. After a week, the border was open and we took trains and buses to Iran. It was quite a scene traveling. Both Peter and I carried our surfboards and our packs. The trains were quite dirty and packed. We slept on the floor of the train. The buses were like the trains, but they had livestock on board. I was getting quite a lesson on life. We arrived at the capital of Tehran. Tehran was quite a beautiful city. We found out that a week before, a young American tourist died the week before. Supposedly she entered a Muslim mosque and was stoned to death. The reason was that only Muslims could go inside the temple. I met a man from the secret police. He came up to me and said that he killed about 30 Americans this year. In Iran, if they find drugs in you, they would shoot you on the spot. What a way to control the drug problem. We then took buses to the border of Afghanistan. This is where the scenery drastically changed. I felt I was transferred back 2,000 years ago. The Afghan people are warriors. Their culture is the same for thousands of years. We were in a high mountain desert. Everyone carried guns or rifles. This is way before the Soviet invasion. I felt I was in a Wild West town. There was no law or order. The people were quite nice. If I knew, you didn't want to cross them up. The people in Afghanistan smoked a lot of hash. They used this drug like alcohol. The whole nation used it. The food was quite good. We took a bus from the border and made it to Kabul. Along the way, we bumped into this Hawaiian named Charlie Krishna. Charlie was a great guy and we traveled together. Kabul at this time was a hangout for the European hippies. The Europeans were heavily involved in drugs. They used a lot of opium. It's quite sad to see people my age totally addicted to opium. There's nothing I could do. Many of them simply wasted away. The drug was very cheap and could be bought anywhere. I knew a lot of my friends in the States would have loved to be in that environment. It was an eye-opening experience. For the first time, I saw so many kids totally wasted and hanging on to life with a thread. They were thousands of miles from home. During this time, I would meditate every day. I knew something incredible was going to happen to me in India. I just had the intuition that my dreams would come true. I wish I would meet someone who could show me the way to open the door. I felt totally protected. It's a beautiful feeling to know that someone is watching over you. I was thousands of miles away from home, and yet I felt great inside. I felt protected. My main goal was to get to India. Ever since I left France, that feeling kept on getting stronger. I felt such a wave and anticipation that my dreams will come true. I had only a short time and would be shown to me. I left Kabul and took the Khyber Pass from Afghanistan into Pakistan. The Khyber Pass was used by Genghis Khan. It's one of the oldest trade routes in the world. Throughout history, it has been an important trade route between Central Asia and India. What a radical road. It was all dirt, which most of Afghanistan was. There was no guardrails, and we had these crazy drivers driving as fast as they could down the pass. The buses were quite different. Each bus would have a different altar depending on which religion they belonged to. There would be flowers, incense, pictures, and memorabilia. We would be driving down this huge mountain on a skinny road. This was the one and only route from Afghanistan to Pakistan. My first day in India was incredible. I remember crossing the border. At this time, there was a 2-mile walk to reach the border, check for India. There were parrots and wild birds everywhere. I felt such a strong spiritual experience. I was home. It's hard to put into words what I was feeling. I knew something incredible was to happen to me in India. I was looking for a teacher who would give me a practical experience of who I was. I remember being checked by an Indian custom lady who was famous for busting people for bringing in drugs into India. Since I didn't use drugs, I wasn't worried. I remember such an aura of peace that came over me. The sun was just setting, and the whole forest was alive. Thousands of parrots were in the forest. The smell was like an incredible perfume in the air. I crossed the border and took an overnight train to New Delhi. When I got to New Delhi, I was very tired and exhausted. I heard rumors that the Sikhs allowed people to stay at their temple. I went to this huge Sikh temple. I asked, "Can I stay here overnight?" The man said no, but there's a huge festival going on down the block. The festival is for Maharaji, a 13-year-old boy who just came back from a tour of the West. I remember 4 months earlier reading about him in Time magazine and from my sister. I was intrigued how a 13-year-old boy could have such a huge following. I arrived at the festival site and was escorted to the stage where 1 million people were sitting. It was amazing, a sea of people. The next thing I knew, a young Indian boy walked on the stage wearing a Krishna outfit. He was wearing a gold crown with jewels and a gold outfit. I was laughing and crying at the same time. Something inside of me knew I was home, that the experience I was looking for could be shown by this Indian boy. Being 18 years old, I was very practical that I wanted a direct experience of God inside of me. What this young Indian boy said made sense. He said, "Seeing is believing." If I told you an ant was 10 feet tall, would you believe me? But if I showed you, seeing is believing. He said, "Don't believe in my words. Take my experience. See for yourself. If it suits your practice, if not, go on your way." At this time of my life, this made sense. I have never heard someone saying, "I can reveal who you really are." All my teachers in the past said, "Believe, and maybe someday you will have that experience." Ronnie said, "Take that experience, practice it, and let the seed bloom into a fruit tree." The following day, I packed up my bags and took a train to Premnagar. Maraji's ashram is near Hardwar. It's a small town in the foothills of the Himalayas. The next 2 weeks I listened to discourses about this knowledge. Something inside of me knew that I was to receive the experience of a lifetime. I knew the door to my soul was to be opened. Words are hard to express the feeling that was going inside of my being. I knew that in a short time I'd be shown and would reveal the secret of life itself. I knew this experience was real. I told a lot of people who had the experience. I could tell and sense that something wonderful was going on. I liked the idea that the proof is in the pudding. I didn't want to join a cult or religious group. I just wanted a direct and continuous experience of the power that's keeping me alive. I knew through practice this could be achieved. During this time, the war between India and Pakistan was going on. Each night there were air raid sirens going on, and off in the distance we could hear bombs going off. There was a general blackout at night. Pakistani bombers were only miles away. Air raid sirens were heard in the distance. At that ashram, the whole place was so serene, while this part of the world, people were dying. Trains of Pakistanis were being massacred going from India to Pakistan, and trainloads of Indians were being massacred going from Pakistan into India. Such a dichotomy. I'll never forget my initiation. There were probably about 20 of us in a small room. Maraji had initiators who revealed his knowledge. We were in the room while Maraji was playing on top of the roof directly overhead of us. This experience that I had that day still sends shivers of joy, just merely the thought. The first technique the initiator revealed was the light technique. I always knew that the human being had the ability to see the light inside. This is an actual experience. When the initiator touched my forehead, I felt this incredible surge of energy. I knew at that point that something incredible was going to happen. My whole body and soul sensed it. My consciousness completely left its physical existence. A golden circle of light appeared. Inside of this circle, a brilliant blue star appeared. This golden circle of light and this blue star was so beautiful. It's probably the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. Waves of love, joy, and peace were surging inside my consciousness. All of a sudden, the star transferred into a ray, a tunnel of blue light which went on for infinity. I merged with the blue ray. It's very hard to describe this experience. I was at home. The doors were open. I was given the keys, and it was up to me to cultivate that experience. I have definite proof that we are more than these bodies. All of a sudden, the mystery of life was revealed. I knew the secrets behind our religion. There was a genuine experience that could be shown and experienced. Years later, I realized that this experience was initiation into Lord's Michael Blue Ray. It was the Jacob's ladder. This experience was the ladder to God. To this day, I'll never forget this experience. It gave me practical proof that God exists. I knew it, but this was a practical experience. It was more real than any outside human experience. I knew my life was on track. I had waited years to go home. I was shown such a glorious place. When I returned to this body and regained physical consciousness, my whole body was shaking like a dot. My body had a hard time. Can you imagine being hooked up to the power plant of the whole universe? I knew no damage was done. Over time, I knew that the body was built and designed to handle these kinds of currents. Day by day, through meditation, man can slowly harmonize with these frequencies and begin to vibrate at this frequency. There were 3 other techniques that were revealed. One was the music technique. I was shown how to listen to the innermost frequencies of life. Since God is energy, man has the capability to be in tune and listen to subtle yet energy frequencies. Different religions have different concepts about this experience. By listening to this music over time, man is filled with such a joy and peace in his life. The mind slowly begins to slow down. In this state, man gets in contact with an energy frequency that is infinite. This energy is pure love and bliss. The whole universe is comprised of this energy. It was, is, and will always be. This is the Word of God. Every major religion talks about the Word in some form or another. This is a very simple technique where man can be in direct communication with the subtle energy. When a person first receives this initiation, the Word is very subtle. The majority of people really don't understand the power of this Word. I know a lot of people who took this experience and never really tried it out. Over time, I can consciously put myself in direct communication with this Word. My whole being is instantly filled with such a wave of love and bliss. I'm not there 24 hours a day, but I know it's possible. I have had experiences that I was completely taken out of this physical world and taken into a place where there's no time and space. The only thing existed was this incredible energy of love. I know I was at home with my Father. This energy exists throughout all creation. It exists in the manifest and unmanifest. It exists throughout time and space and beyond. All of creation came from this Word. In the Bible in St. John, the verse goes like this: in the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. Human beings have the capability to tune into this experience. The last experience was one of the living waters or nectar experience. When man is in this experience, powerful hormones and enzymes are secreted through the endocrine system. Through the ages, man has learned that he has a capability to actually experience this nectar or living water. Just one drop of this is an incredible, powerful experience. One drop has the capability to take man's consciousness into a definite altered state. This fluid is very cleansing to the body. When Christ was in the desert for 40 days and nights, he lived off this manna. This experience is energy in its subtle form. It is energy, yet it transmutes itself into matter. This experience is very powerful to the endocrine system. I've had numerous experiences with this nectar. It's probably the most intoxicating drug known in the universe. Unlike a drug which has side effects, this experience is completely beneficial to the body and soul. These experiences reveal over time who we truly are. We are more than our mind or body. We are in fact the source of life. Each one of us are part of this universal consciousness. We just don't remember it. It's amazing when we were born, we came from the source. Our whole body was this consciousness. Over time, we forgot. Years later, we have completely forgot of our true existence. After the initiation, I thank my Creator for revealing Himself to me. My dreams come true. I had the tools. Everything made sense to me. I could read the scriptures and understand the hidden meaning. The scriptures were at the same wavelength. I had a lot of respect for the major religions. While we were in Bombay one day, I was in Raji's room where all of a sudden he got out of his bed, stood up, and started to wave his hands towards one of his initiators, Ashoka. The hair on his whole body stood up. It looked like he put his hand in a light socket. He was yelling, "Please, Raji, stop it." After about 20 seconds, Raji's hand fell to his side and Ashoka was back to normal. Being an 18-year-old kid that I was, I said, "Hi, Raji. Do you want to zap him once more?" Raji said, "Sure," and just for a fraction of a second, he raised his hand and put electricity back into him. Raji was electrocuting him. We all laughed. This is my first time that I spent close time with Maraji. There was only a few Westerners there. It was so beautiful to play with him. At the same time, have a great respect for him. Before we left to Kenya, Miraji asked us if we wanted any holy water. Holy water is a custom in India when the master places his foot in water. I only had a canteen, and Miraji placed his foot inside of the canteen. We all laughed. The next day we headed out for Kenya. On board the plane was Kali, Kathleen, and Tess. These were the 3 girls I traveled with from New Delhi. On board the plane, we drank the water from the canteen. All of us got rip-roaring drunk. I've been drunk prior to that once or twice, but this is a drunk of joy. We all somehow managed to saunter off the plane. We spent a few days in Nairobi. Tess's parents lived on the outskirts of town. Kenya was an incredible country. Parts of it looked like England. We relaxed for a few days. I remember one moment at Tess's house. I was meditating in the backyard. When I opened my eyes and saw Miraji standing there, he was laughing and laughing. I remember in Bombay asking him if we were to make it to South Africa. We were going to hitchhike from Kenya to South Africa. He said we would, but we were going to have a hell of a lot of adventures along the way. Ultimately, I discovered that the search for oneself has to be done by yourself. A teacher may give you the tools, but you have to utilize them. It is our responsibility to make this quest. Of course, at times, it's very difficult. We learn a lot of lessons on the way. Each one of us are on our journey. We are our own teacher and student on this journey. I have different lessons than you have. Each one of us are truly unique. I feel that we are on a quest to find ourselves. We are here to have a complete understanding on life. Man will never stop growing. The pursuit of knowledge is ingrained into our very existence. We are beings on the pursuit of knowledge. We are wondering who I am. What is my purpose on this planet? Where am I going? All of us deep down have this inner calling. It's part of our DNA makeup. For thousands of years, man has been yearning to find out the answers. Man ultimately learns that the search exists inside. We have all looked for the answers outside, but the real answer lies inside of our own being. We are in fact our own teacher. We may have help on the outside from outside teachers, but ultimately it is up to each one of us. I feel so fortunate that throughout history our planet has been blessed by teachers who have dedicated their lives to helping mankind. Let's take their wisdom and knowledge and transform this planet. I've learned that over time to be more compassionate and loving towards people. Let's accept this human race and let's go on from there. We all want peace on earth. Let's open our hearts. Over time, I realized that we are our best teachers. We are the ones who open up the door. Only we can transform ourselves. There was once a time in my life when I had the chance to meditate as much as I wanted. All my worldly concerns such as food and a roof on my head was taken care of me. This was during the 70s. I remember waking up early in the morning to meditate for hours on end. It was an incredible experience. Each day it was surfing the inner wave. My whole being would be completely saturated with love and bliss and would just go deeper and deeper. At times I would be conscious of this human body. I would be in the presence of a universal consciousness of pure love. Each day my body and mind would take that experience and absorb it. Over time, I could simply just close my eyes and just be taken away. I wasn't afraid of death because each day I die and come back to life. I read books back then on the deaf experience, and my experience and those were definitely on the same boat. I did this not to escape from society, but I wanted to know the answers about life itself and consciousness. I had the time. I was in an environment if I could spend this time. I felt I was the luckiest human in the world. My whole being was radiating bliss and the power of love. I felt in one way like an astronaut going into space. I was exploring uncharted territories of consciousness. I saw that power and love exists inside of us, and we can tap into it consciously. We are much more than our bodies. At times, I experienced a power more powerful than any power in this physical universe. I saw a brilliant light that existed everywhere and was blinding. The light was love itself. I heard a sound hum like noise, which is completely full of harmony. My whole body was drenched in universal substance, which was nectar-like. My whole being was totally energized. It's so hard to describe this experience. I felt every human being on the face of this planet is looking for this. We're looking for the power of love in our lives. We go out and search for it every moment, and we can't find it. We need to look in the right place. I spent from 1971 to 79 daily meditating for hours on end. This gave me a foundation where I could take this experience and integrate it into this world. During this time, all of my friends were already finished college, had families already. I started 10 years later, but in my eyes it was perfect. I built a spiritual foundation in my life. I learned a lot about myself in this universe. I learned the most important thing, that love is the most important thing to hold on to. We're all here to help each other. None of us are greater. We're on the same boat. So let's help each other. We all have different gifts to offer this world. I have years of experience in going inside. I just want to share my experience with you. We are never alone. We have friends who are looking after us. For the past 10 years, I haven't meditated for hours on end. I have a family and a great job in Hawaii. I'm now bringing my experience into my daily life. I just want to be an example. I have nothing to prove or want to convince anybody. I'm just trying to live in harmony with this earth and universe. If you met me, you would have no idea who I am. I don't broadcast my ideas over. I believe in not forcing any ideas in anybody. I'm not here to convert anybody to a particular way of thought. I just simply live my life. When I was living in Miami, Florida, I had this incredible experience. I was with some friends, and we decided to try to channel an entity. I have never tried this before. Anyway, I closed my eyes for a few minutes. I felt a strong presence of this being. It was the same feeling if your eyes were closed, you could sense the presence of someone walking into the room. This being was full of love and joy. This being was Archangel Michael. Michael was of a teaching was completely different than all the others. It was more on the subconscious experimental level. I could feel this presence enter my body, and I was lifted and shifted a few degrees. I was still my body, but my consciousness was altered. His teachings were not of words, but experiences. I felt very close to him. I felt he was a very good friend of mine. Through him, I had experienced that we were part of the same energy pattern. There are infinite energy patterns in the universe, and we are part of a particular strand. Through him, I realized my name was Micaiah. I realized I was something of a newcomer to this planet. I learned I haven't been here for 34,000 years. I realized that the reason I loved meditation so much in the early 70s was I loved the existence of being infinite. For thousands of years, I existed without a body. I existed as energy. Michael reminded me of this. Both of us were trailblazers. I didn't channel Michael for very long. At times I still call him and talk to him, but mostly I'm learning on my own. I know probably people would have a hard time accepting challenge, but think of challenge as a form of TV or radio. By simply turning one's mind, man has a capability to tune into a particular frequency. There's nothing magical or mysterious about it. Can you name any sacred book which has not been channeled? God didn't write the Bible, people did. The scriptures were channeled. Do you think that the message only came 2,000 years ago and is no longer available today? We all have a capability, but forgotten how to. Oracles have been around for thousands of years. Just recently has this phenomenon been taking place inside of our society. From what I've seen and experienced, we have help from the other side to assist us in our own transformation. So many books have been around recently talking about angels when man dies. Isn't it about time we have that experience daily in our lives? Man has the capability. If we learn how to live in harmony, we can be open to it. Western scientists have a hard time buying the facts. We need such concrete evidence. But tell me, what happens when your breath leaves your body? You are dead. Can you bring it back? Try to find out that secret while you're alive. Your life will be transformed.